boundaries between things, edges, how we understand things to be autonomous and dependent. I don't care very much whether I'm understood to be a sculptor or a painter. I do care about the history of both of those categories of human activity. My work is, insofar as it's involved with surface and picture making and with framing, it's very much a part of the history of painting. And insofar as I'm interested in material and space in relationship to picture making, it's very much in dialogue with the history of sculpture. So both of those histories and conventions are important to me. And the frame as a device, a human-made device, seems to have more staying power than the pedestal inside of the art world at the moment. I'm interested in the relationship between sensuality, existing as a human being in a body, and the experience of life and time, one moment to another, those are all very particular moments and experiences. And I'm interested in that piece of human experience as it bumps up against abstraction. So language is abstract. Pictures are always abstract. They're not, if it's a picture of something, it's an abstraction in relationship to the experience of that something. We propose pictures to be timeless. You know, they're still, and they are, of course, nothing is timeless. Everything exists in time. But we propose abstraction as a way to communicate with one another over time. So surfaces and textures and the actuality of what things are made of, the kind of material, whether it's plastic or stone or ceramic or paint, all of those materials are very specific, and I use them to create experiences that are both specific and reference kind of shared forms that transcend their specificity. So that's one way to answer your question. I mean, and also surface, we see the surface of things. Our eyes, our sense of vision respond to the surface, and surfaces have the potential to create illusion and fiction, and they can be deceptive, but they can also be full of a kind of storytelling. I mean, my work isn't literary. I don't have stories that have a beginning, middle, and an end in a verbal sense, but I really value in painting and surface that capacity for the surface to evoke a kind of other space, whether it's a perceptually other kind of space and emotively a space too. Yes, and the skin is an organ. It's a part of our body that's an organ, and it's permeable. So it's both the boundary between us and the rest of the world, but it's a permeable boundary. And paint skin is often has a metaphoric relationship to body skin. Well, I kind of heard two questions in there. One about order and disorder and the relationship between things that way. And I think that I'm interested in making use of accident and serendipity. I tend not to spend a lot of time looking for just the right materials in my work. I kind of take advantage of what's here, and I create something that is very ordered and controlled, but has room for and kind of riffs on, in a way, things that are less ordered. And And then you talk about the assists in my work. That's a kind of group of works that I started in 2015 that are sculptures that don't stand up on their own. So they need to be tied to another thing. And that other thing could be supplied by me, but it could be supplied by a curator, or if someone owns the work, they would have to choose the thing, or they could be in dialogue with me. So that's a kind of, I mean, that idea is very parallel to the fact that paintings need an assist. They need to hang on the wall. Paintings aren't made to just lie around on the floor. They hang on a wall. So that the assists are related in that way, only there isn't a convention to support that relationship. So if you walk into an exhibition and see my assist strapped to other objects and you haven't read something or spoken to people about it, you might assume that the object that's holding up the assist is part of the artwork. So it's a complicated proposal, but I really enjoy it because it carries through. I also have made a lot of installation work, and when I use that word installation, I in my work, that means work that is tied to the architecture. So the boundary between the thing I've made and the room or building that it's made in relationship to isn't a clear one, and the work can't be divorced from the architecture, even though it nevertheless continues to have an autonomy that's distinct from the architecture. So the relationship of the assist to its prop is a similarly complicated boundary. Just like you talked about earlier, like our skin is also a complicated boundary between us and the world. Well, I don't think that I don't have I don't understand the things I use to be symbolic in the way that you're describing the fairy tale. But I think that my work is very much about how pleasure matters in life, and also about the relationship between pleasure and discomfort and struggle and awkwardness also. And I think that though I can't make a direct comparison between my work and fairy tales because my work isn't so, well, it's not prescriptive, or it doesn't have a suggestion about what one should do in the work. It is, I think my work is a place that acknowledges that kind of subjectivity, the same kind of subjectivity that fairy tales speak to. And the complexity of the negotiating between one's internal subjective space and emotionality and thinking and the structures of the world that we share. My work is involved in that, and involved in, and also color is a very sensual, pleasurable thing. Difficult to put words to and say exactly why, but it is. And different colors, I think, mean different things. Some of the meanings have to do with the relationship between oneself, where people are, and the landscape. I mean, if the ocean's blue and the sky is blue, then the color takes on that meaning around you. I think if you live in the desert, you probably have a different relationship to what colors mean in that place than, where I'm living here in Chicago. And then colors are also given different cultural symbolism too, and that changes over time and place. But I think we also have a physiological relationship to color, and all of that is emotional, connected to emotions. And I think fairy tales and stories in general, fiction, address ideas and structures for thinking and with thoughts about the frame of life in relationship to both in relation to feelings and pleasures and pains. So I think my work is in that way, can be understood to sit in a similar realm as fairy tales. Well, I think my work is, yes, always. I mean, I don't often have direct reference to human figures in the work, though that's not always the case. This work right behind me has some. Um, but my work is always about the relationship between the body and space and the human hand and space and scale. The scale of the work is related to the scale of the hand or the scale of the body or the head in relationship to the work, and then kind of often a bridge between the scale of a body and the place it's in. And scale is a relative idea, different from size. We can measure the size of something, but the scale of something has to do with its relative size. And so that is always something that comes to matter in the work in one way or another in relationship to the body. But I don't understand myself to be making a work most of the time. I don't make works that are where I'm asking people to forget the nature of the environment that the work is in. So in English, environmental works, like where you walk in and like going to the movies, you go to the movies and you forget that you're in a movie theater and you get lost into the flow of the fiction of the film. I enjoy that experience. I have nothing against it. I care about that a lot. But that's not what I do in my work. In my work, I'm interested in maintaining a sense of the actual fact of where the work is, even while I create some experience of disturbing that certainty about what that space is. So I don't want the work to erase its place or site. I want the work to ask questions about the relationship between a more fictive space where one gets lost in the manufacture of something that is not part of our mundane reality, but where there's a question about the relationship between that mundane actuality of space and place and fiction. It's a good question. There's no one person. I think there are a lot of different people and kinds of work that have influenced me. I think that minimalism, mattered to me a lot. My work doesn't look minimal. It isn't minimal, but I think minimalism, Agnes Martin, Donald Judd, opened up space, and Robert Ryman. The work kind of opened up space for the kind of work that I make, where the minimal work called attention to what was around it as well as what it was. And the work of Schwitters, moving into the work of Rauschenberg, I mean, clearly, in Dada work, I mean, people who used objects to make things and brought the meaning of those objects into the work itself. My work has taken a lot from those people, and then also surrealism, Max Ernst and Merritt Oppenheim's Teacup, lots and lots of different histories. Also, I grew up in Vancouver in Canada on the West Coast, and the First Nations work there influenced me a lot from the time I was very young. And I've gotten very familiar with the work of Robert Davidson, and also grew up around a lot of Robert Reed sculptures out there. So also when I was a kid, I was taken to the Louvre, and I remember the pointillists. I was really fascinated with how those different little small parts of color added up to be both image and also mixing color from a distance. So lots of different influences.